And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll with planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
125! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to NASASpaceflight's live stream of the launch of the Starlink 6-17 mission atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Hagen Warren. I am an editor here at NSF, and I hope everybody is having a wonderful evening, what looks to be a gorgeous evening for yet another launch out of Florida. Joining me today is a fellow editor and commentator here at NSF, Mr. Trevor Sesnick. Trevor, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. This is one of the rare Falcon Starlink missions where there's actually exciting stuff to talk about. So I think this will be a cool launch, and I'm excited.
Yeah, and we'll get a bit more into all of that in a little bit. Also joining us here today, I do not believe he is at his comm set right now, is Max Evans. He's out in the field with a camera, so we may be seeing some views from him here in a little bit, and hopefully we'll be hearing from him as well soon. In the background, working in the background, we have Patrick operating the stream here, and Kevin as well assisting. Pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, as Das would say, making sure everything is in working order. So, yeah, yet another Starlink launch. Let's see. This is the first, I believe, of 2 this week. Trevor, do you want to give us the rundown on what's happening in this launch? I know Starlinks happen all the time. Most people know what's happening here. But for anybody that's new here, what is Starlink? What are we going to be seeing on today's launch? And then maybe you can go into a bit more of those fun details you mentioned there.
Yeah, of course. So to your point, yes, there are a lot of Starlink missions these days. And in fact, there are 3 Starlink missions scheduled for the next 7 days. 2 of those are from Slick 40, and then the final one is from Slick 4 East in Vandenberg at the beginning of next week. Tonight's launch, as Hagen noted, is Starlink Group 6-17, which will be sending 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites into a 284 by 293 kilometer orbit inclined 43 degrees. These satellites will spend the coming months using their onboard propulsion to raise their orbit to the 530 kilometer circular shell at 43 degrees, and then there it will further increase the bandwidth available in SpaceX's Starlink internet constellation. Tonight's flight is special for one big reason, and that is this is the first time a Falcon 9 is flying for a 17th time. So this booster has flown 16 times already. Its first mission was on GPS-3 SVO3 on June 30th of 2020. It since then has flown Starlink V1.0 Launch 11, Starlink Launch 14, Turksat 5A, Starlink Launch 18, Starlink Launch 22, Starlink Launch 24, Transporter 2, Starlink Group 4-3, Starlink Group 4-6, Starlink Group 4-9, Starlink Group 4-14. Almost there, I promise. Starlink Group 4-19, Galaxy 33 and 34, Transporter 6, and then finally Starlink Group 5-15. So yeah, this booster has flown a ton. And
Yes.
yeah, this will be the first 17th flight. Following liftoff, the booster will fly on a southern trajectory on the descending node of Starlink, where it will then attempt to land on SpaceX's drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas, which is stationed approximately 618 kilometers downrange. Both fairing halves will then attempt to be recovered by Doug, which was stationed roughly 676 kilometers downrange. So busy times for SpaceX with all of their launches, as this will be SpaceX's 67th launch of the year and 144th total launch from Slick 40.
Well, so yeah, I mean, a lot of launches. I'm still sort of in shock from how many launches you read off in succession there, but yeah. So another Starlink, but some cool things happening with it as well. Um, Real quick, I did want to note that to everybody watching, if you do have any questions for us, you can tag us in chat with @NASASpaceflight followed by your question. It'll put it into this cool software we have in the back channel where we can pull your questions onto stream, and I'll ask them to Trevor, and then either Trevor or me will answer them. So yeah. So as the questions get rolling in here, was hoping Max would be back by now so we could ask him about how the weather and stuff is. Um, yeah. Looks to be a gorgeous night out there on the Cape tonight.
Oh,
Um,
it
yeah.
looks like SpaceX has pushed back the mission. It is now 11:38 p.m. Eastern Time.
Oh, okay then.
All right, I guess we'll be here for longer than we thought.
Yep. Well then. So some questions start rolling in here shortly. Oh man. Looks like we do have a super chat here. A $5 super chat asking where are orbits measured from? If we say something is in a 550 kilometer orbit, where do they measure the 550 kilometers from?
That's a really good question, and in general, defining orbits is quite complicated, especially when you talk about orbital velocity. Like, do you define it relative to the Earth's surface, which is moving, or do you define it relative to some stationary thing on the Earth, like the poles or whatever? So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and I believe the answer that it's above mean sea level, uh, but I could be wrong about that, and I'm not entirely sure how that takes into account the slightly oblique nature of the Earth. So, yeah, it's a really good question.
Definitely. Another super chat here with a question asking, is Shell 7 replacing Shell 1? It's the same 53-degree orbit, and Shell 1 was the Starlinks launched during launches during L1 through L28, correct?
Was it through L28? I can't actually remember. But anyway, those are actually different constellations. And sorry, give me one sec to pull something up. Because, so there's two phases of Starlink, two constellations. The first is Starlink Phase 1 or Version 1, which is where SpaceX placed the majority of the all of the Starlink V1.0 satellites, as well as some of the Starlink V1.5 satellites. Those were what we know as shells 1 through 5, and you are correct that shell 1 is the 53-degree inclination with an orbital altitude of 550 kilometers. Then there was also the shell 4 of V1, which was the 53.2-degree shell with an orbital altitude of 540 kilometers, so very similar. But then there are the second generation Starlink shells, where you are correct that there is the 53-degree shell with an altitude of 525 kilometers. So it's not as much that those are a replacement as it is just additional capacity. And we've actually seen SpaceX file for permits to eventually replace those Starlink V1 and V1.5 satellites with Starlink V2 Mini and full-size V2 satellites. So eventually they'll kind of just be all these version 2 satellites working together.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that delay, we sort of got a lot of talking here to do. So some more questions we have here. Okay, one here about the boosters asking, have any of the currently active Falcon 9 boosters undergone a major refurbishment?
Refurbishment? Not necessarily, but they have gone through major inspections. So I believe, sorry, I'm gonna have to go look at my spreadsheets again because this is a really good question. Whichever booster flew for a 10th time first, which seems to be B1051, if I remember correctly, that underwent of some fairly major inspections where they went through everything and really tried to understand how the booster is wearing. And then it's thought that they did another set of pretty in-depth inspections with B1058 after it flew for its 15th time. And then since that happened, Alex in the back channel says it's actually B1060 and B1058 that they did thorough inspections on, and that can be seen from the very long turnaround time between the 15th and 16th missions. And those, they did lots of inspections again, but once again, we don't think they did that much refurbishment. They just wanted to understand how is Falcon 9 after it's been through 15 launches and landings. That said, all of the boosters have some refurbishment done to them. We know that sometimes engines are replaced, sometimes just like turbines and engines are replaced. And then, of course, they'll do inspections on the tanks and everything. So it really varies a lot, but to the public's knowledge, they have not done any major refurbishment.
There you go. And I was just told in the back channel that Max, you're back. How is it? How are you doing?
I am back. How I'm doing fabulous. It's another beautiful night out here at the Kennedy Space Center, looking out towards like 40. But with that unfortunate news of a delay, not exactly sure why that is, because the weather overall here, I mean, there's some high altitude wispies, and there's a bit of a breeze coming in from the east. So hopefully we can get off before the end of the window.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have a radar up on screen right now. It doesn't look like there's anything really that would be threatening Slick 40 right now out there. So interesting to think about what could have caused this this delay. But nonetheless, we're still here. We're going to talk about Falcon and rockets and everything. So yeah.
I will
right.
note that the 45th Space Weather Squadron, they released the launch mission execution forecast yesterday that has a 40% chance of violating weather constraints during tonight's window, and their primary concern is the cumulus cloud rule, which is, if I remember correctly, where if you fly through some of these cumulus clouds, you can create charges on the surface of your vehicle, which then would cause lightning to strike, which is obviously not ideal.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, I guess we can keep on here with some questions. We have some awesome questions coming in here. Oh, a good one here about visibility. Someone at Jimmy here asking, is this going to be visible from Hilton Head, South Carolina? Trevor, this ultimately depends on what direction these missions are flying out of, because some of these missions, depending on the orbits they fly into, will fly up the East Coast. Some will fly south out of Florida. But most of the time, if you have clear skies and these missions are, if you're on the southern tip of Florida, you can see these missions really well. But if these missions fly up the East Coast and I believe that 53-degree orbit, then you can see them really well. Unfortunately, as you can see here, this is the trajectory for tonight's mission. So it's going to be flying about southeast out of the. So Hilton Head, South Carolina, you may be cutting it close there. You may barely be able to see it over the horizon. But if you're in South Florida and you have clear skies, you will probably be able to see this. You'll probably be able to see Falcon 9 very well. So yeah, if you have clear skies, I'd encourage you to go out. Seeing a Starlink launch, seeing it up close is cool, but also seeing it from far away is really neat as well. So I encourage everyone to head out and go out and see it if you have a shot at seeing it. And Trevor, I have a stat question here for you. I know you love to keep tabs on all the different statistics of Falcon 9. How many times has Falcon 9 ever been flown in total?
This will be the 257th Falcon 9 launch. I will add that while it's the 257th Falcon 9 launch, this is the 258th Falcon 9 mission, because AMO 6, which had a pre-launch anomaly during a static fire test, counts as a mission, but not as a launch. So that's why there's the one launch difference between launches and missions when you look at Falcon 9.
There you go. Going back here, we have another question about refurbishment here. I know we were talking about that just a few minutes ago. You touched on it there. Question you're asking: how long does it take to refurbish boosters? And then, do we have any indication as to what it might cost to, I guess not refurbish, but make sure these boosters are able to keep on flying? And then, do they ever swap out any of the tanks or the engines on there? We know Rocket Lab recently, with one of their flights, swapped out one of the engines that had previously flown. But does Falcon 9 keep all 9 of its engines on the bottom of its first stage whenever they do go through occasional inspections and refurbishments?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the answer to that is we don't have a ton of insight into this. However, we do know that occasionally engines are swapped. A good example of this is before the Crew 1 mission, which was November of 2020, SpaceX realized that there was some lacquer left over from production in the engines, which was causing them to hard start. And they saw this on several different engines. One that was, I believe it was ultimately a GPS launch that scrubbed because of it. I think it was GPS 3 SV04 on B1062. So then SpaceX had this data from this launch attempt that had a hard start of an engine, and they were able to realize that that they should go through and check all of the boosters to make sure that they didn't have this block in the engine, which was causing this hard start. So what they ended up doing is replacing some of the engines on some of the boosters. So I believe they replaced 2 engines on B1061, and then an engine or 2 on GPS 3 SV04, which was B1062, and then a few on some of the older boosters. And then we also have heard ahead of other crewed launches of SpaceX replacing turbines in the engines, which is what accelerates the propellant and before it goes into the preburner and the main combustion chamber. So we know that there's a good amount of engine work done. Then, however, we also think that that there are Merlins flying for the 17th time now, so they don't get replaced often. Then finally, would this booster have original tanks and landing legs? Tanks, definitely. Landing legs are a little bit harder to track. On newer boosters, it is very common for the landing legs to just be retracted and for them to not have to do any refurbishment to them. However, after some landings that are a little bit harder, sometimes they need to replace the crush cores, or in extreme cases like B1069, it seems like they had to replace the landing legs themselves. So most of the vehicle is the same. It's just small parts that they'll replace between flights.
Cool. All right. Well, if you're just now joining us, originally this mission, Starlink 6-17 here, was supposed to launch, I believe, at 10:47 p.m. Eastern time. Now it's been pushed back about an hour. So yeah, we're just sitting here hanging out, answering some questions. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions for us, be sure to tag us in chat with @NASASpaceflight, followed by your question, and then we'll try to pick it out and get to ask it on stream. Let's see here. We have a question here asking, what other companies are getting close to launching a reusable rocket like SpaceX? We know Rocket Lab has recovered boosters before, but nobody yet is really fully relaunching orbital class boosters like SpaceX. But Trevor, I guess in your opinion, who do you believe at this point is really getting the closest to achieving reflying previously flown orbital class boosters like SpaceX?
Frankly, it doesn't really seem like anyone is that close. Right, Rocket Lab, as you mentioned, has been working on reuse for several years now, and as you noted on their last launch attempt, they were reflying an engine. However, following last night's launch failure of Electron, I suspect that those plans are kind of going to be put on hold while they really focus on ensuring that Stage 2 production is smooth and that they don't have any repeat errors of whatever happened last night. Then the only other company that's somewhat close, one could argue, is Blue Origin, right? They've obviously reused several New Shepard vehicles. I believe they've had 4 or 5 tails. Tails is what they call boosters that have reflown, and those are not orbital. However, New Glenn, if you actually read the article that we just published today on the NASASpaceflight.com, you will realize has been making good progress, and it definitely seems like Blue Origin is going to aggressively pursue reuse of New Glenn. So my bet on next vehicle to be reflown would either be New Glenn or maybe Electron or some Chinese private company vehicle that I don't know that much about.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. New Glenn definitely seems like the favorite option here. If it launches whenever we hope it does. But then other than that, definitely Electron, as they've demonstrated that it is something that they are capable of doing. It's just they are slowly working through the process of actually achieving that.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Rocket Lab recovers from last night's anomaly, because right, last night was their 41st launch attempt and the 4th failure of Electron, which is not, it's definitely not the best position to be in for a launch company to have a launch 40 failure or have a failure 40 launches in.
Yeah. Obviously wishing the best to all of them and that they have a smooth investigation and figure out what all is happening. But yeah, really unfortunate to see that happen last night, but I'm sure they'll bounce back and get right back on their feet. A question here about the stubby nozzle for you, Trevor. So 2 questions here.
This one
I'm
goes
gonna
to
ask in
Max.
one.
Stubby questions got to go to Max.
Okay,
I will
Max.
happily take that one.
Okay, first up, is this a stubby launch?
So unfortunately, no. So SpaceX currently does not have the MVAC stubby nozzle flying on any of the Starlink missions in the foreseeable future, only because the performance needed from, well, let me rephrase that. So they need the performance that they can get out of the full size Merlin vacuum nozzle, and because these Starlink satellites are very heavy, especially when you have a cluster of the V2 minis, 21 or 22 in mass on top of the Falcon 9. So, unfortunately, due to performance reasons, they will not be flying the stubby nozzle on any Starlink missions anytime soon.
And then a follow-up to that here is, do we know if SpaceX will ever, add a stubby nozzle onto, say, a Falcon Heavy mission, or even, maybe bring in a variant of that for Raptor? I doubt they would for Raptor, but, would they consider doing it for Falcon Heavy?
It's not out of the question for Falcon Heavy, but given the fact that the payloads that are flown on Falcon Heavy need the performance from 3 Falcon 9 cores, I can't imagine SpaceX resorting to a stubby Merlin vacuum engine anytime soon.
Yeah, it would kind of be oxymoronic where you need Falcon Heavy for more performance, but then remove performance from it by having a shorter nozzle.
Right. Let's see here. Okay, Trevor. Maybe another statistics question here for you. And I don't think you might not have this one immediately in front of you. So, but how many Falcon 9 missions have been Starlink? Are we
Uh,
past more than 50% of Falcon 9 missions having been Starlink at this point?
no, we are not. Tonight's launch is the 106th operational Starlink mission, so 107 total dedicated Starlink mission. And this will be the 257th Falcon 9 flight. So we're nearing 50%, but still a little bit under. Let's actually do the math. So 107 divided by 257 is 41.6% of Falcon 9 launches have been Starlink.
There you go. So getting close to it, not quite there yet. But definitely a significant portion of Falcon 9's history has been Starlink. Okay, here. Yeah, let's talk about this here. So Starlink's deployment mechanism. So for tonight, how 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites are being deployed. How are they deployed? And then, when can you see them? We know that whenever they deploy out, you can sometimes see them. If you're in the right place at the right time, you can see a train of Starlinks going overhead. They're really cool to see. But how are Starlinks deployed from Falcon 9's second stage after launch, Trevor? And, what is the process behind seeing that train? What causes that train to happen?
Yeah, this is a very good question. So the deploy mechanism for the Starlink V2 mini satellites is actually a little bit different from the deploy mechanism that we saw on the Starlink V1.5 satellites and V1.0 satellites. So how they used to work is you would have these 4 tension rods that would, or the vehicle would start spinning along its actually, is that its y-axis first? I'm not 100% sure how that axis is defined, but it starts spinning along its long axis, so over the nozzle on the long side. And then they would deploy these, Alex is saying in the back channel, end to end is shorter to say. You're correct, Alex. Anyway, they would deploy these 4 tension rods after that, which would then float away from the vehicle. And then because the whole vehicle is spinning along its y-axis, they were able to, they would slowly start floating apart and go in a straight line and bump into each other a little bit and start separating out. But on Starlink V2 launches, they reduce this to 2 tension rods on either side of the vehicle that actually stay attached to the second stage. And what huge advantage that has is the tension rods are no longer left in orbit. For the Starlink V1 missions, they would be deployed into the, roughly 290 circular orbit, kilometer circular orbit. And then they would stay up there for a few months before re-entering. And now there's none of that. So SpaceX has even further reduced the amount of junk from these Starlink missions. Then as to how you can see them, that's just because on the back of these satellites, right, there are solar panels and other bits of insulation that are highly reflective, and those bounce the sun rays off toward the Earth. But SpaceX has actually been working very, very hard to reduce that, and they had a really cool tweet thread about that the other day. These coatings that they have to reduce the amount of light that gets reflected toward the surface. Is it possible to see them with the telescope? I mean, technically, you don't even need that. You can see them with your naked eye pretty easily.
I imagine it would be a lot harder to try and see a Starlink train with a telescope, because you're going to be zooming in a lot more with a telescope. So you really have to be pointing just right to be able to see these Starlink trains with a telescope. So definitely, I feel like it's a lot easier to see Starlink trains just with the naked eye, looking at the sky, seeing them fly overhead.
It's also worth pointing out that SpaceX has actually posted a couple of videos from recent Starlink missions over on Twix of the whole Starlink deployment process, and it's absolutely beautiful.
So cool.
Yeah.
It is. That's actually the video that I was trying to pull up when answering that, and it is gorgeous. I'll see if we can get that pulled up. I'll talk to Pat.
Also, Max, I just have to point out, Twix
I mean, some people still say Twitter, others say X. But honestly, I'm finding it difficult to say either, so I just put them all together and call it Twix. You know, it's easier.
I mean, it
One
works.
syllable.
It
It's one
it
syllable.
works. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Um. Okay, one question here asking, how far inland can these flights be seen? I can actually speak on this a bit. I live out near the East Coast, so I can see these Starlink missions whenever they fly up the East Coast fairly easily. But I've been told that people as far inland as Charlotte, North Carolina, can see these Starlink missions flying. I'm not too sure about your location. You're saying here in Alabama. It might be a little bit more tough for you to see a flight out of Florida, but definitely maybe whenever SpaceX starts getting Starship launching out of Texas, you could see you may be able to see Starlink launching over the Gulf. That'd be really cool. But yeah, as you can see here, this trajectory here on screen is tonight's flight, flying southeast out of the Cape. So as I mentioned earlier, people in South Florida are going to have a really good view of this. People in the Bahamas as well. If we have any viewers in the Bahamas, are going to be able to see tonight's Starlink very well.
Even if you're over by Clearwater, Tampa area, you should still see it clear as day. Even though you are
Yep.
maybe a couple hundred miles away, it's still easily visible from on the other side of Florida.
Yep. Okay. So it looks like we are within the T-minus 1 hour mark here for tonight's launch. Of course, if you're just now joining, and you were wondering why are we not a lot closer to launch, it's because T0 was delayed by about an hour earlier. So we're just here hanging out, answering questions. If you have any questions, be sure to tag us with @NASASpaceflight in chat, and we'll ask them on stream.
It wouldn't be a late night Starlink without the delays, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's why late night, and that's why Jack knows I have to say this, and that's why these late night Starlinks do be hitting different, though.
Yep. Are the mosquitoes getting any better, Max? I know you were complaining about the mosquitoes earlier.
I was, yeah. When I first got out here to deploy the cameras, the mosquitoes were absolutely horrendous, and the press site right now is absolutely infested with these horrible spiky hitchhiker plants that stick to your jeans, and they're fresh too, so they are especially sharp. So even if you grab them with like just the gentlest of touch, they'll go right into your skin and it hurts like a mother. But as for the mosquitoes right now, there's actually a pretty good breeze coming out of the east right now, and I have bug spray on. But so far, I want to say for the last half hour or so, it's actually been okay. So hopefully this breeze keeps up and keeps them away.
Awesome.
Are you saying that Midnight's hits different is very good?
Oh my. Oh, okay, here we go. Here is that Starlink deployment video that Trevor was just talking about.
Yeah, so this is one of them. This is the bottom side of the Starlink satellites that you're looking at, and you can see stage 2 reflected in it. And what SpaceX was talking about with this video is how they have this dielectric coating on the bottom where they're somehow, I don't understand the physics of this. Also, I love how you can see the reflection of the stage in that. It is so cool. Somehow they're able to prevent photons from reflecting off and going toward the surface of the Earth, or at least significantly reduce that. And what's really cool is SpaceX is actually selling this at cost to other satellite manufacturers and operators so that they too can have this technology to help reduce the amount of light that reflects off of their vehicle. Which is just awesome that SpaceX realizes that having so many satellites in orbit is a problem for the astronomy community and is trying to work with them to at least minimize its effects.
Definitely. It's been a topic for a while. How do we minimize the effects of not just Starlink, but just satellite constellations in general? And in having talked with multiple scientists about this issue of, how do we prevent the satellite constellations from ruining, astronomy on Earth? Because of course there are ground telescopes, massive ground telescopes here on Earth, like the Very Large Telescope, that have to observe from the surface of the Earth, that are going to be very clearly affected by these satellites. And in talking with scientists and such, I've been told that some organizations and stuff that are launching these satellite constellations don't really work with the astronomy community. So it's awesome to see that SpaceX is taking the initiative to try to ensure that, while being able to complete their own goal of launching all these Starlink satellites and having an internet constellation in orbit, they're also working with the astronomy community to ensure that the astronomy community can also get what they want to get done, be able to continue doing observations and not having, satellite streaks and images of galaxies and stuff. And it's also worth noting that ground telescopes are not the only telescopes that are being affected by Starlink satellites and such. I believe it was a few months ago that even Hubble had an image where there was a Starlink streak in it. So it's awesome to see that SpaceX is working with the astronomy community to just really ensure that, that we can all get along and make sure that we get all of our work done that we need to get done. So it's just awesome to see. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so big interesting question. Do you think it's a good idea for SpaceX to upgrade Falcon 9 to hot staging? We know Starship is moving toward, hot staging and stuff. Why won't that really work for Falcon 9?
So the big reason is Falcon 9 is just not designed for this at all. So there are kind of two big differences. The first is that the inner stage of Falcon 9 is attached to the first stage rather than the second stage like on Starship. And this is obviously more mass efficient since you want as much mass as possible on the first stage, if rather than on the second stage, since on the first stage for every kilogram you add to the stage 1, you remove, for every 8 kilograms you add to the first stage, you remove about 1 kilogram from its orbital capability, whereas the second stage it's 1 for 1. However, on Starship, when you need to bring back the vehicle, right, you don't want engines just hanging out, so they have to have the inner stage on Starship so that it's able to protect the engine bay during reentry. And the other big difference is that Falcon 9 has a pusher system already. So inside the inner stage, there are 4 pushers, I believe, 3 radially around the second stage, and then 1 in the center that push the stages apart. So that would have to be removed. And that would just completely change the system. So it was just not worth the engineering effort for Falcon 9, since it's just not designed for it from the ground up.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. One question here asking, have SpaceX built more Raptors or Merlins?
Definitely Merlins.
Yeah.
They've produced on the order of 300 to 400 Raptor 2s, plus I believe about 120 Raptor 1s. So they're nearing 500 Raptor engines. When on Merlin they've produced roughly 300 stage 2s, so that's 300 engines, and then approximately 100 first stages, so 1,200 engines total, plus some replacements here and there and testing engines. So definitely Merlin.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. Here's a good one about boosters. Are any of the operational boosters ever transferred from coast to coast? So if there's a booster out in Vandenberg, do they ever, try to, if they ever want to move it to Florida, will they do that? Or will they just keep, if there's a Vandy booster, do they keep it just in Vandenberg? Or, will they transfer them from coast to coast?
I think they've ended up transferring a couple Block 5 boosters from the Cape over to Vandenberg, but I don't know exactly how many or if it was just those two. But what we do know is that all Falcon 9s are produced in Hawthorne. So either way, the Falcon 9s do have to make a coast-to-coast journey to get from Hawthorne to the Space Coast. So at least those that are assigned to either Slick 40 or 39A.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, Alex in the back channel saying that they move if needed, and that B1061 was moved last year. Okay. All right, we have a lightning tower question, and one that we most likely do not know as of yet. But question you're asking: will the new crew tower at Slick 40 have its own lightning rod like 39A, or will they rely on the 4 existing lightning towers there? Because we know with 39A, the fixed service structure, which is what SpaceX uses to where SpaceX has their crew access arm attached for astronauts to walk from the tower to Dragon during crewed missions, it has its own lightning mast to top it. Whereas at Launch Complex 39B, whenever SLS is out there and it's on its mobile launch platform out there, it doesn't have a lightning mast to top it because there are 3 massive lightning towers out there. So I'm assuming here that this Slick 40 crew access tower most likely will not have a lightning mast on it because we do have these 4 pre-existing lightning towers out here that you can see surrounding Falcon 9.
Yeah, I would imagine that it would not. And a good frame of reference for this was if you look at the crew access tower over at Slick 41 for Atlas and Starliner, the very top of the tower is below the maximum height of the 4 lightning towers surrounding the pad.
Yep.
And over at Slick 40, it's going to be more of the same. So the crew access tower over at 40, I would imagine, is not going to be any taller than how tall Falcon 9 stands right now. It might be a little bit taller to get the crew access arm integrated and working, but honestly, I don't expect there to be a bespoke lightning system at the top of the crew access tower at 40.
Yep. Okay. All right. Trevor, another maybe a little bit of a statistics question here for you. When could we maybe expect the 20th reflight of a Falcon 9 booster happen? You know, like what is the average turnaround time for a booster? How often does it launch? And then, you know, do we have any indication as to when we could maybe see that 20th reflight happening?
Yeah, so after these major inspections that I was talking about earlier, which again happened after the 10th flight and after the 15th flight, these older boosters, so B1060 and B1058, which are the current life leaders, seem to be being flown every 60 to 70 days on average. So that would mean 3 more flights after today's, so 3 times 70, roughly 210 days, if my mental math is correct, which would put us, probably early next year. So early to mid next year would be my best guess.
Well, there we go. All right, let's see. Getting below the 45-minute mark here until launch, of course, with that delay earlier. So we've been hanging out, answering some questions. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to tag at NASASpaceflight in chat. Get those in here. It can be SpaceX related, Falcon 9 related. If you have any science questions, I can do my best to answer them. Yeah. Oh, wow. Here's another video of a Starlink deploy.
Yeah, so this is the really good video. I believe this was on the first Starlink V2 launch, or V2 mini launch, and Elon tweeted this, and you can see the satellite slowly floating away, and then the tension rods actually staying attached to stage 2. And you can already see them kind of at the end of this video where they start to very slowly separate.
Such an awesome shot. it's still really cool just to see that we're not, even though we're a bit farther away, you can still see the reflection of the top of stage 2 in those Starlink satellites. Awesome. Okay, we do have some super chats here that I did want to hit real quick. We have Lee here becoming a Pad Rat member. Thank you so much for your support. And another one here from IndyCar asking, once the Merlin 1D is installed, do they remain in that configuration for all future flights? Is there a chance that the 3 re-entry and that the center engine have fired more times flight after flight and that those will eventually have to be replaced?
Yeah, so the 3 engines, engine 1, engine 9, and engine 5, are the only Merlin engines on Falcon 9 that are capable of reignition during flight. And that's because they have these separate T-tab canisters that actually is what holds the ignition fluid for the entry and landing burn, or the boost back if there is a boost back burn on that mission. So those engines are definitely fired more than the others, and it really shouldn't be that big of a problem. It shouldn't cause too much wear on them. It probably just means that they have to do a little bit more boroscoping of the engine between flights, which is when they go through and clean any soot off and ensure that the engine is in good working order.
Yeah, there we go. Those are some super chats. Thank you so much for your support. Of course, it helps us do what we do here at NSF, provide you with these live streams and our 24/7 cams out at the Cape, down at Starbase, and at McGregor. So thank you so much to everybody for your endless support. Even if you're just here watching the stream, we thank you so much for just being here, hanging out with us. We are approaching the T-minus 40-minute mark for the launch of yet another Starlink out of Florida. And as we are approaching that T-minus 40-minute mark, it's been a while since we went live earlier. So since we're approaching the point where we went live earlier, Trevor, do you want to provide just another really quick, short rundown on what to expect here as prop load and stuff gets ready to get started here, hopefully?
Yeah, of course. And I'm actually really confused because SpaceX's website just updated again, but now it says launch happened 10 minutes ago. So not sure what's going on with the cache of SpaceX's website. But yeah, so this is the Starlink Group 6-17 mission, which will carry 22 Starlink V2 Mini internet communication satellites to a 284 by 293 kilometer low Earth orbit. The satellites will then spend the coming months raising into the 530 kilometer circular orbit at 43 degrees. The first stage of tonight's launch, which is what we've been discussing quite a bit today, is setting a record. It is flying for the 17th time. It first flew on a GPS mission, and I'm not going to go through all of the missions again because it took way too long. But 16 flights later, here it is, and you can see that on the pad it is looking very sooty. Following liftoff, the first stage will attempt landing on SpaceX's drone ship, a short follow Gravitas, which, if successful, will mark their 227th booster landing and 153rd in a row. The mission is going on the descending node today, so southeast, and then you can see on screen right now the rough trajectory and then also the landing zone for both the booster and the fairings in the orange area. So yeah, it's an exciting mission tonight, even though it's just another Starlink. And then on screen right now is stage 2 deorbit. So it'll conduct a deorbit burn right off the coast of South Africa and then re-enter over the Indian Ocean.
There we go. All right. So, went through and pulled in some more questions here. So First up, Trevor, or Max, either one. Why are all these recent Starlink launches launching out of the south, launching to the southeast out of the Cape, and rather than the northeast, like many of the past ones have?
Max, do you want to take that? Okay.
Sorry, talking while muted. My bad. Uh, oops. So I imagine I don't know the most specific answer off the top of my head, but I imagine it has something to do with the FAA opening airspace just north of the KIC and Cape Canaveral of the approach corridor for aircraft coming into Orlando, and that is why SpaceX is targeting southeastern trajectories for these Starlink missions.
I also think that during the winter, the seas are generally quite a bit calmer down south than up north. Or I guess we're not in the winter now, more in the summer.
Yeah, we are in the dog days of summer right now.
Yeah. So I think it's also a little bit better for the drone ship recoveries.
Cool. Another question here asking, I know we were talking about the upcoming crew access tower at Slick 40. You know, how's that coming along? Do we have any indication as to how that's going out at Slick 40? Do all of these Starlink launches out of Slick 40, you know, maybe slow down the progress of its construction out there?
Sure. So, to answer the last part of the question, I'm sure that if Slick 40 was shut down completely and there was no activity flying from it, I'm sure this tower would be constructed much faster. But the reality is, Slick 40 right now is the busiest launch complex in the world, and they have to manage construction around the launch cadence right now. As it stands, the first segment is currently stacked over at Slick 40 right now, and we are expecting the next two or three segments to be moving here in the coming weeks. My personal prediction is that it will be 90% complete, meaning I guess all segments stacked by around probably by the end of the year.
All right, there we go. Tons of towers going up out on the Cape. Starship Tower at 39A. We have the crew access tower at Slick 40. It's going to be looking like a city out there before long with all these big old towers out there. I want to hit some super chats here real quick. We have one here from Johnny saying B10 46-3 and B10 51-3 were both hat tricks. A few others have flown from all three launch pads. There you go. And then we have a store message here from Rupin saying, "Thanks for all the coverage and keep up the amazing work. Go Falcon, go Starship, and go NSF." Well, thank you for your support. Helps us do what we do here. Love being here, hanging out with everybody, watching some rockets launch. So yeah. Okay. Let's see where we are on the countdown here. We're at approaching the T-minus 30-minute mark here. Trevor, has the website updated again? I know it said the launch was delayed about an hour, and then it said it happened 10 minutes ago. Any update on that front?
Yeah, for me, right, the website was updated to the 11. Sorry, let me check. What is the 11:38 launch time that they seem to be on track for right now? And then when I refreshed it again, it went back to saying SpaceX is targeting Tuesday, September 19th at 10:49 p.m. Eastern Time. So their webpage seems to think the rocket launched 10 minutes ago. And just as I say that, SpaceX has tweeted, "All systems are looking good for tonight's launch of 22 Starlink satellites from Florida. Weather is 90% favorable for liftoff."
It's good
Okay.
news.
Yes.
So by now they should be in prop load, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are 35 minutes out. So yeah, we should start seeing some frost on Falcon 9 very, very shortly.
Excellent.
Yep. You can see this handy dandy graphic we have here showing our countdown timeline. See, we're below that 35-minute mark here, so Stage 1 RP1, Stage 1 locks, and Stage 2 RP1. Propellant loading should have begun. So next major event we'll be looking for is the best vent, as Crispy calls it. It's the T-minus 20-minute vent, that massive vent you see coming from the transporter, Erector, and Falcon when they're purging the lines. So, yeah. Hopefully we'll be seeing that in about 13 minutes or so. So, fingers crossed.
It used to be a lot easier to see, but now with that dang crane out there blocking the view of the booster, we're not going to be able to see the frost as easily as we normally would. Especially on this booster, with it being almost black with the amount of soot on it from 16 previous flights. The frost should be very, very, very evident. But hopefully we'll still see it. But that crane is kind of in the way.
Yeah. Oh, and Max, how's the weather looking? I know we asked this earlier on in the stream, but it's been a while since earlier on in the stream. So, how's weather looking out there? Are those, as you called it, high altitude wispies still up in the air and everything?
The high altitude wispies, yes. Well, as SpaceX said, weather seems to be holding at 90% favorable, which is excellent. As it stands right now, there is a handful of high altitude wispies out right now, but that is the only cloud cover that I can see. Otherwise, the Kennedy Space Center is actually very lit up tonight, and which is actually making it quite difficult to see the stars right now. Between the VAB being lit up and the countdown clock being very, very bright, and the pad lights being up over at 39B with the mobile launcher, it is very, very bright out here tonight. But I think overall things are trending in the right direction, as we like to say.
Awesome. And you saw there that radar shot. They're showing no significant weather out there, no rain, nothing. So that's great news. Let's hope propellant loading has begun and is underway, and that we'll be seeing the best vent in about 10 minutes.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for the best vent. I want to hear for Team
Chris
has joined us.
Oh my goodness.
I was too busy watching Booster 10 rolling out down Highway 4, and everyone's in comms net, and I'm thinking, have we gone live already? And I come in and you've been telling me you've been on comms for ages, just waiting for this thing to actually have a T0. I'm thinking, oh, God, better help out.
Yeah, we went live, and then I think within about 5 minutes, I refreshed SpaceX's website, and they were targeting an hour later now. I'm like, oh, fun.
Yeah, so people in chat are probably wondering. I went to Linus mode. I was like, I've just joined it, and there's gaps, and there's people just saying your thing now and again. I'm thinking, whoa, is this live stream or what? Then they go, we've been live for 18 hours already. I'm like, oh, uh-oh. I better join in now. I feel guilty as heck. I better join in.
Everyone forgets about the late night Starlink. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not mad. It's okay.
I've got no facts to tell you about Starlink, by the way.
Well, Chris, how are you doing? I'll give you a formal introduction. Everybody, this is Chris Bergen, NSF Actual. How are you doing tonight, Chris?
Yeah, hi, my name's Chris. I like horses and football, which is the round version, not the one with helmets and shoulder pads, although apparently I'm a New York Jets fan now. Yes, I started this fun show about, how many years ago? 2005. It was meant to be a niche site for shuttle, and it's turned into this monster.
Not to interrupt real quick, Chris, but I just want to point out we do see frost on the vehicle now, so this is very good indication that they're into fuel loading.
I was just about to say that, actually. Thank you, Trevor.
It's a very good sign, that. So now we've gone from a period during the site's lifetime of thinking, what the heck do we do after shuttle? Because there's only this Ares rocket, and we all knew Ares was a silly rocket. So we're all thinking, what's going to happen next? Then suddenly this Mr. Musk emailed me. This is a true story. Elon Musk emailed me saying, would you like to interview me about rockets? Seriously. He actually emailed me asking for an interview. He wouldn't do that these days. He's too famous. But that was before the Falcon 1 launch, the first Falcon 1 launch. He emailed us. We did the first interviews with him as a new site. So that's where it's kind of come full circle, because we're covering his launches left, right, and centre now, and his big rockets from Starbase. So it's all come full circle. But I want to bring up something relevant to what we're looking at right now. When do we think we'll start seeing tower sections rising out of the ground? Because we've seen one transported already, and the rest are going to be transported soon. So at some point, this viewpoint is going to change quite dramatically, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Slake 40 is, I imagine, the view over there, at least from this perspective, will be different by the end of this year, and by quite a lot. I think all 4 segments are going to be fully stacked by the end of the year, and that is going to change how that is going to change how that pad looks from every angle. And so it's wonderful to see so much activity at so many different pads here at the Cape. It's amazing.
Talking while muted. Yeah, definitely. Oh me. Okay, so where are we at right now? About just past T-minus 28 minutes here. So as Trevor mentioned there, we saw there on that camera, fueling has begun. So here you can see with this graphic here, approaching Chris's favorite moment of the countdown. And and then after that you can see what all has got to happen before Falcon 9 lifts off. This is not an easy process. A lot has to go right. So yeah. All right. So it looks like we have a $60 super chat here from Andy Law saying no memberships tonight, just appreciating the coverage. Thank you to everyone on the team, especially the back end folk. Definitely. And thank you so much, Andy, for your support. It means the world to us. As I mentioned earlier, we would not be able to be here on the stream covering this launch if it wasn't for everybody's generous support. So thank you, everybody who's super chatted, everybody who's asked questions, even if you're just sitting here listening to me talk. Thank you so much for just being here and supporting us. It really does mean the world to us.
And by the
And
way,
also-
that's can I just mention Andy's a regular supporter of us, and that's £50. But not just that; it's 4:11 a.m. in the morning where we both are. So he has donated 50
Goodness
quid
gracious.
at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's some commitment, Andy. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and like Chris said, Andy has also gifted tons of Red Team memberships to other people, so huge part of our community. So thank you, Andy.
Definitely. And we have some gifted memberships here. We have 5 gifted memberships here from Bideford, and then Tracy gifting 1 Red Team membership. So thank you so much for your support, as I mentioned there. And to whoever got those memberships, we hope you enjoy the membership perks you get.
By the way, I will have to go quiet at T-minus 20 minutes because I have to bandicam the clip of the venting starting for what was formerly known as Twitter, now called X. But yes, I don't want to bandicam my own horrible voice on it, so I will be very quiet during that point.
Just call it Twix.
There you go. Oh, me. All right, let's see here. We're going to keep on going with some questions here we have in our queue. We know SpaceX reuses a whole bunch of things, and that includes the fairings that you see at the top of Falcon 9 there. Do we know what the max lifespan of fairings are? What is the max amount of times that they've reused fairings, and do they have some sort of goal that they're trying to achieve with reusing fairings?
Yeah,
I think-
this is a very good question. The most times they've reflown a single fairing half is 11 times, which has surpassed the goal that Elon laid out at like the beginning of 2020, which was to fly them 10 times, although he said fly 10 times by the end of the year. And by the end of the year, they were at like 4 or 5 flights. So they missed on that. But outside of that, SpaceX has not said anything about these fairings, and which is very disappointing to me because it's such a cool reuse program that so many people just kind of ignore because it doesn't get talked about. And it has been very successful. For example, over 90% of fairing halves flown on Falcon 9 this year have been flight proven.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Oh,
And
look at
what
this.
do we have here?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
a booster?
That's Booster 10. It's had its vacation, its chilly vacation. I've actually tweeted that, so I'm repeating my own joke. That's bad, isn't it? That's not great. But it's been to the Masses test site at SpaceX Starbase for its cryo loading. Not the first one as well. It's had several cryo loadings. And now it's been transported back on the SPMTs, back to production site. Now, the relevance of this is we've got Booster 9 out there right now. Ship 25 is being destacked. We are waiting for that regulatory approval process to complete, and hopefully that will not take too long. Everyone's panicking a little bit. I don't blame them because the wording of the releases from the likes of the FAA are worded like you'd expect from an agency like that. So people can tend to think the worst case scenario of they're up to many days of completing it, but no, we never know. It could still launch in October or November, and that would clear the way for this one. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Because they've done a lot of testing at masses already with technically the next flight pair, which we're thinking is 28 and Booster 10, there's a very good chance that if, again, another if, caveat time, everything goes well with the Booster 9 Ship 25 launch to the point that it doesn't blow up the launch site well, because if it gets a staging, that's a win. Anything that doesn't destroy the launch site is a win as well. There's a very good chance this could be a real fast turnaround. It could launch again this year. And the way they may be working with the FAA is to approve not just Booster 9 Ship 25 launch, but Booster 10's launch as well. So that's where it gets really interesting. We've had these gaps between the last flight and this one coming up. Booster 10's been tested already to the point that all it has to do is roll out to the orbital launch site. I'm being careful not to get over the T-20 event here. Get to the launch site and then do a static fire test. And you never know, we might be seeing 2 launches within a matter of a month to 2 months. And that'll get really interesting because that's a very much a SpaceX objective.
Awesome. Some great shots out of Starbase out there in Texas. Well, Chris, it's almost time.
I know, I was being careful not to talk too long. You know what I'm like? When I start answering something, I go on for about 10 minutes. So I'm very careful not to start talking over the T-minus 20-minute event. We are literally 120 seconds away from it.
I love that I can hear the excitement in your voice.
I'm not that excited. It's fun. It's cool. It's a sign that the vehicle's okay. I don't start cheering and dancing around the room about it.
I mean, we've only seen 67 of them this year, so...
Yeah, it's nothing special. Once you see one, you see them all.
All right, let's see. Trying to pick out a question here. Okay. Are there any clues as to when another booster, B1058, will make its 17th flight? Do we have any idea when that will happen?
I don't believe so. The launch manifest for the boosters, of course, is not public, so we don't know when 1058 is slated to fly again. Hopefully soon, because that'll be incredible.
I would bet money that it is Saturday's launch of Starlink Group 6-18. The way that SpaceX has handled these B1058 and B1060 in the past is as soon as one flies, the next mission from the same coast is the other. So that would be my guess.
There you go. All right.
Coming up in just a few seconds from the T-minus 20-minute event.
Yeah. Should see that starting shortly.
Actually,
you'll see it
right on cue. There it goes.
There we go.
She blows.
So you're going to see that. Going to be a big old plume coming out of the transporter erector there.
So what this vent is, for those who may not know, is the second stage of Falcon 9 is loaded with both rocket propellant 1, which is roughly room temperature, and liquid oxygen, which is very much below room temperature. I believe it's on the order of negative 210 degrees centigrade. And on the second stage, there's only one fueling line, or propellant loading line. So they load the RP1 first, which ends at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, in which case they then start to purge the lines on the transporter erector, which is what this venting is, which cools it down and makes sure that there's no RP1 left over in it. And then this will go into T-minus 16 minutes, which is when the loading of liquid oxygen on the second stage will begin.
Awesome. And there you can see that graphic right there telling us when everything will happen. All right, let's see. Super chat here from Space Wolf saying, with the increased cadence for 2024, will SpaceX will it need additional support from the drone ships? You know, if so, do we have any idea what they call it or anything? I doubt we do, but will they have to make some changes to how they operate the drone ships and stuff to ensure they can meet the goals they want to reach next year in terms of launches and cadence?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And theoretically, they could launch 144 times with just 3 drone ships, 1 on the West Coast and 2 on the East Coast. However, that relies on a significant reduction time in turnarounds of Slick 4 East. They would need to match what the drone ship is capable of, which the drone ship can be turned around in, I believe it's like 6-ish days on the West Coast and then like 7 to 8 on the East Coast. So that would be roughly 60 launches from Vandenberg. And then on the East Coast, with 2 drone ships, they could launch more than the other 80 times based on the current drone ship turnaround time. However, that assumes no delays in schedule, which obviously are not going to happen. So I suspect that if SpaceX really wants to launch 150 and more times in future years, they will probably want to get another drone ship at some point.
There you go. Awesome. So that T-minus
By the
20-minute
way,
event is still going. Oh, go ahead.
can I just
go ahead, Chris.
quick? Yeah, I will interrupt. Sorry, I'm terrible at interrupting. I do it all the time, but I'm going to do it again because there's a fun thing. We see the drone ships arrive back on our Space Coast Live cameras. The cameras we've got up at Canaveral got another camera there as well now, thanks to extra help there we've got there from John. But there's a fun thing that Blue Origin have brutally scrapped a ship named after Jeff Bezos' mother, which was quite brutal, to say the least. They took it to Brownsville, ironically, amazingly, the port of Brownsville. So the Starbase Live cameras saw Blue Origin's landing ship being taken to Port of Brownsville for scrapping, which was named after his mother. They are planning to land their New Glenn boosters on drone ships as well. So we're talking about extra drone ships in the planning coming not too long, because it'd be possibly 2 years when they start landing them on drone ships, maybe. So we're going to see more and more of those arriving back into Port Canaveral, and they will be quite next door to each other, because I think Blue Origin's port operations are next door to SpaceX's.
Yeah, I believe that
Yeah.
Port Canaveral even released a statement at some point talking about how, with all of the marine assets between SpaceX and Blue Origin and some of the other rocket companies down there, they need to find better solutions of where to keep some of the marine assets, because they can't just have the port full of boats for rockets to land on. And then I think there was also some humorous comment among there that due to SpaceX's insane launch cadence, they haven't really been that big of a problem since their boats are just constantly at sea.
Okay. So that T-minus 20-minute event there, as you can see, has now stopped. We're approaching the T-minus 15-minute mark here to launch. Again, as Trevor mentioned earlier, this is not just a normal Starlink launch. We have a booster record being broken tonight. And speaking of that, we have a super chat here from Anush, a $5 super chat, saying, "What missions has this booster flown?" Trevor, do you want to
I'll do it
read
again.
off? Do it again.
Take a deep breath, Trevor.
Yeah. Do it all in one breath. That'll be your challenge.
All in one breath? Okay.
All in one breath. As fast as you can.
Do it in the
GPS
style of Jim Carrey from Liar Liar, where he's talking to the policeman.
Yes!
I don't know what that is, but I'll try for one breath. GPS 3, SVO3, Starlink V11, Starlink L14, Turksat 5A, Starlink Launch 18, Starlink Launch 22, Starlink Launch 24, Transporter 2, Starlink Group 4-3, Starlink Group 4-6, Starlink Group 4-9, Starlink Group 4-14, Starlink Group 4-19, Galaxy 33 and 34, Transporter 6, and Starlink Group 5-15.
Man, you're running on fumes toward the end there. Nice. Very nice.
Good job, Trevor. Okay. All right. So, okay. Yeah, here we go. I was just about to bring this up. So, here is the countdown timeline. So, where we currently stand here. So, stage 2 LOX load has begun. As you can see there, it's updated. T-minus 20-minute event happened a few minutes ago. Next major event will be engine chill, the start of engine chill at T-minus 7 minutes. So, that'll be coming up here soon. And then after that, we'll see the beginning of the Stromback retract. And yeah, soon after that, both LOX loads will complete on stage 1 and stage 2, and then Falcon 9 will enter startup, and then a minute later, we should see liftoff. So, awesome. I have a question here from chat asking, would or are B-1058 and B-1060 likely to be the next Falcon Heavy expendable side boosters? Would they put these fleet-leading boosters as expendable side boosters on a Falcon Heavy mission? Is that something they would, maybe venture to do, or would they want to keep these, fleet-leading boosters for Falcon 9 missions to keep pushing the envelope on what they can do with the booster?
Gosh, I hope not. It would just personally and selfishly, I would love. It would be amazing to see 1058 in a museum somewhere, because that of course is the only Falcon 9 in the fleet right now with the NASA worm logo painted on it, because it was a booster that brought Americans back into space from U.S. soil with DM2 and Bob and Doug about 3 years ago.
You have to
So
do the
selfishly,
full
I
Jim
hope not.
Bridenstine quote.
American rockets, American. So wait, how'd it go? American rockets, American soil.
Americans.
American astronauts launching American rockets from American soil.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that.
I miss Jim Bridenstine.
I love
Me
Jim.
too. I was
we
just
all?
thinking that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Bill Nelson's doing a good job and whatever, but Jim Bridenstine kind of like caught your imagination, and it was just the way he almost embraced things, like how SpaceX are fine with blowing things up to find the sweet spot in their future vehicles. And I'd never heard that from a NASA administrator before, and I've been covering this a long time. We've had some quite dull NASA administrators. He's like a breath of fresh air.
Definitely. I cannot believe what has it been? It's been almost 3 years now without him. It's hard to believe. All right. Cool question here. And something that we know that SpaceX actually looked into at one point. Would there be any benefit to launching Falcon from Boca Chica? We know Starship is out there at Boca Chica at Starbase. And at one time, we know that SpaceX looked at building a Falcon 9 launch site out at Boca Chica. So, what motivated them to move away from that and just keep Falcon 9 in Florida and at Vandenberg?
Yeah, that's a good question. And right, Boca Chica, or Starbase, whatever you want to call it, was originally going to be a Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launch pad, and it wasn't until the Starhopper program where those plans changed. And frankly, I don't understand why they chose that launch location. To me, it seems like just about the worst location you can pick for anything that's not a development flight, because there's so much populated land around it that the inclinations that you can fly to are very, very limited. So I think it was because of that, and just for the need for it for Starbase, that they decided to cancel the Falcon plans for it and look at R&D for their upcoming vehicle. And Alex in the back channel was saying that Boca Chica would have been dedicated to just commercial GTO launches, and everything else would have been from Florida, which makes sense. But what I still don't get about that rationale is there are so few GTO launches at this point. Like, Florida could have easily handled it with the 2 pads that they have. So to me, it was a bizarre decision.
Yeah. Okay, getting ever closer to launch now. Below the T-minus 10-minute mark, and would you look at here? Is that the NASASpaceflight.com shop?
Woo!
I
LT,
think
by
it
the way.
is. Yeah. Here you can see some awesome metal prints here. We have some metal prints there from the recent Atlas V launch. Some awesome shots of Starship out there from Starbase, from Sean and Jack and everybody out there. Here you can see an awesome engine shot of Cygnus NG-19. I believe that's from Max. And then, of course, we also have T-shirts. We have our L2 subscription service here. You can get access to a ton of awesome information through L2 and also get to talk to tons of other space fans and such. So you see some awesome merchandise we have there. So if you're interested at all in getting some NASASpaceflight.com gear, go there, shop, and then if you do end up checking out, you can leave a message here, and it'll put it into our software and we can bring it up on stream. So yeah. All right. Approaching T-minus 8 minutes. I feel like I've been waiting forever for this, and it's a Starlink launch. Yeah.
You could say
Normally we're
it's been
not
a
hanging
long
around
time
this
coming,
long.
Hayden.
Yes, very much so. Normally we aren't hanging around this long for Starlink, at least on stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least we were fearless and didn't let the delay get to us.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Well, as much as we all don't want to be hanging around for hours in a live stream, scrubs not ruds, because look what happened last night, or this morning even, in fact, because Rocket Lab held for about an hour waiting for, well, I don't think it was an hour, it held for quite a bit though, waiting for solar activity to diminish before they could launch. Then they went for it, and it went okay during first stage. During stage separation, the feed went dead. We saw the velocity dropping, which was never a good sign, before the feed went dead. And that's all she wrote. That was a mission failure. So, and Rocket Lab have been really good. I mean, they are regularly launching and doing quite well. For them to have a failure like that, it's kind of like, you've got to be careful. Rockets will bite you in the behind. I think it's the acceptable thing to say on a live stream. They bite you in the behind if you're not too careful. So we're seeing these rockets launch left, right, and center, especially Falcon 9s. We're seeing them land left, right, and center. They did expect to lose some. They always expect to lose some during recovery. So once one of them, and it will happen one day, once a booster comes back and doesn't make it to the drone ship or to LZ1, LZ2, don't be like, oh, it's a disaster for SpaceX. It's just they've been so good in the previous ones. So you've got to take rockets on their face value. They are temperamental, to say the least.
And it's also worth noting that with Falcon 9 tonight as well, we are into unknown territory in that 1060 is flying for the 17th time. And this is the first time any rocket in history, let alone Falcon 9, has done this. So we are back into unknown territory as to what Falcon 9 can handle. The end goal, I think, right now is to get boosters to about 20 flights before getting them recertified again to keep flying. But of course, we simply don't know what Falcon 9 can handle in terms of how many times it can fly.
I personally think it's unlikely that they push Falcon 9 past 20 flights. However, I very much hope SpaceX proves me wrong on that.
If they do and things go wrong for either 1060 or 1058, I hope it's 1060 so they save 1058 from a horrible ending, because that would be very tragic.
Yeah.
All right. Getting ever closer. I feel like this should be, like Max mentioned earlier, like, we're not used to waiting around this long for a Starlink launch. I feel like this should be like some big mission atop this Falcon 9, but Starlink is cool. All right. So T-minus 5 minutes now. Maybe want to try and get in one or two more questions before we begin talking about, what we can expect these last few minutes. Okay, out of all the currently launched Starlink V2 mini satellites, how many are currently in operation?
Ooh, of Starlink V2 satellites only? I can tell you the total number of operational Starlink satellites is 4,097 in operational orbits and 4,764 in orbit. I don't know about just V2 satellites.
Okay, maybe we can get Alex in the back channel to get that for us. I know he keeps up with that type of stuff. But anyways, we have another super chat here, another one from Anush. Thank you for your support tonight, Anush. saying, "Do you see Falcon 9 retiring very rapidly after Starship is operational?" And then because we know that Starlink is going to be launched on Starship soon after, and then I'll say 1989 Taylor's version soon. Trevor, what do you think about that? And real quick before you answer, Trevor, Max, you got to get ready to go and get the camera going. So get some awesome shots.
I'm certainly going to try. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I will see you on the other side.
Good luck, Max.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll see you later.
First of all, yeah, only 38 days. I'm so excited. And then I don't see Falcon 9 being retired very quickly after Starship is operational for several reasons. First of all, crew. I think it is a very long time until crew launch and re-enter on Starship, and Dragon obviously is meant to launch on Falcon 9, so I think they'll continue Dragon missions. Then additionally, it'll take Starship a while to get to the flight rate of Falcon 9 and even surpass it eventually. So until they're at the point where they're launching satellites as soon as they produce them, Falcon 9 is still giving them additional mass to orbit capabilities. So it's kind of a win-win to just keep launching on it. And I believe SpaceX has made similar comments about this to the FCC, where they've said they want to keep launching Falcon 9 and Starlink on Falcon 9 even after Starship is operational. So they'll be launching the full-size V2 satellites on Starship and then the V2 mini satellites on Falcon 9, because it's all bonus. And they'll be profitable because Starlink is starting to become at least cash flow positive, it seems.
Yeah. Yep. All
And
right.
also worth noting
We are
that
within-
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete and Stage 1 LOX load is complete. Sorry for interrupting, Hagen.
There we go. Nope, that's what I was about. We are now within the T-minus 2-minute mark here. You can see that vent there, the last purging of lines here, as fuel load is now complete, and we should be seeing the beginning of. We should see Falcon 9 head into startup here in about 20 seconds or so. Ooh. As Trevor mentioned earlier, it's been a long time coming. We've been on stream for how long has it been now? Maybe an hour, longer than an hour. But yep. And then Alex in the back channel here confirming that stage 2 LOX load is complete. And prop load is now officially finished.
Let's hope this cruel summer isn't rude to Falcon 9 and this first 17th flight goes well.
It's not very subtle, is it, Trevor? Come on.
All right. There's 45 seconds now. And we are in startup, Alex confirms in the back channel. And T-minus 30 seconds here. Godspeed Falcon 9, Starlink, and SpaceX. And T-minus 15. T-minus 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. There is ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9 with 22 Starlink satellites. Gorgeous shot of launch there from Fleet Cam. All right, and a gorgeous launch from Slick 40 there. You can see Falcon 9 climbing higher and higher into the atmosphere, gaining both altitude and speed. It has surpassed maximum aerodynamic pressures when aerodynamic loads are at their greatest on the vehicle during ascent. Next up, we're going to be seeing the shutdown of all 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the first stage. We call that event MECO. That'll then be quickly followed by stage separation and then ignition of the upper stage Merlin vacuum engine. After that, the first stage here will reorient itself and then begin its landing sequence to land out on the drone ship downrange in the Atlantic. You can see the plume from those Merlin engines expanding at the bottom of the first stage there. MECO should be coming up here shortly. And there's MECO. There is the stage separation and ignition of that upper stage Merlin vacuum engine. So awesome seeing it turn bright red like that at night. And there you can see the grid fins on the first stage beginning to deploy. Those are going to help Falcon 9 reorient itself and steer itself during its descent back down to the drone ship there. Gorgeous launch out from the Cape. Love seeing those colors and seeing it look like from Fleet Cam there. And there you can see inside the payload fairing, coming up on payload fairing separation. And there it is. There's payload fairing separation. You see all 22 of those Starlink V2 mini satellites. Yeah. One of the unfortunate things about these night launches is that after launch, you can't really see anything other than the upper stage engine there. Everything's so dark. But hopefully we'll get a cool shot of the first stage coming down, landing on the drone ship. See those thrusters firing on the upper stage to help keep it oriented properly. Approaching T plus 4 minutes into flight. And we should be seeing stage 1 there. If you look at the telemetry at the bottom of the screen there, you can see stage 1 looks like it may have reached its apogee. It's going to get ready to begin to fall back down towards Earth. Now, during the landing process for Falcon 9 booster here, you're going to see it perform an entry burn in just a few minutes here. And this entry burn helps slow the vehicle as it's re-entering the atmosphere. Helps slows it just enough to where during the landing burn, which is followed just a few seconds after the entry burn, the landing burn can slow Falcon 9 to a slow enough speed to safely land atop the drone ship. This will be, if all goes right, this should be another milestone landing, shouldn't it, Trevor?
Yeah, so we just saw the first successful ascent of a booster for its 17th time, and now let's hope we see the first successful descent.
You can see inside the inner stage there on Falcon 9's first stage booster. And then back to black. All right, coming up here in just a few seconds, we should see that entry burn beginning. You can see Falcon 9 rapidly descending now if you look at its telemetry there. And standing by for the beginning of that entry burn. There we go. And there you can see them switching to those 3 engines. And there's that shutdown. Looked to be a good entry burn. It's always neat at night seeing these Falcon 9 boosters coming in through the atmosphere during the startup of entry burn. You can even see it right there, right now on the grid fins. You can see those atmospheric effects of something coming into the atmosphere that quickly. Wow, that's cool. And again, this Starlink mission flew southeast out of the Cape. So if you're one of our viewers and you happen to be in the Bahamas, you should be able to see. You should have been able to see that entry burn really well, but you may actually have a shot at seeing that landing burn as well. And we have lost the signal there on stage 1, not unexpected. And there we go, it's back. All right, that landing burn should be coming up here shortly. And during that landing burn, or shortly thereafter, shortly after Falcon 9 lands, we should see the shutdown of that second engine, of that second stage Merlin vacuum engine on the right. All right, you can see on that stage 1 telemetry on the bottom left, you can see that altitude getting lower and lower. That landing burn, oh, there we go. Landing burn has now started. Oh, looks like we had an issue with the stream there. Hopefully we'll get confirmation here in a second that it landed. Oh, here we go. Landing leg deploy. And touchdown. Yet another Falcon 9 booster recovered. And a
That
milestone
is
one at that.
SpaceX's 227th landing and 153rd consecutive, with B1060-17 becoming B1060-18.
Awesome.
A slight
And-
programming note there is that it was not us who put that ad in. YouTube has got absolutely no idea when to put ads into streams. We put one at the start and one at the end. We never put one in the middle. So that's not us, by the way. That's just YouTube being stupid. And the irony of the landing burn part was we're taking from SpaceX's feed that they tweet out now. And that's what was going a bit dodgy at the time. So that was fun, wasn't it? But it wasn't us. So we apologies for that, but it wasn't us.
Yeah, and it looks like second engine cut off there went well too. So yet another batch of Starlink satellites heading up into orbit. We'll say, no matter how many times these missions launch, or we see a Falcon 9 launch, you just never go out of style. It's just so awesome seeing just a rocket launch. So, and as you can see there on the left, one of our favorite shots, an empty launch pad. Falcon 9 now on its way into orbit. Max, how was it?
I like how you put that. It doesn't go out of style. It's very classy. Very, very classy. But yeah, that was absolutely gorgeous. My only real complaint, I guess, would be there was this massive cloud hanging overhead here that blocked a majority of the trajectory. And of course, now it's pretty much gone, as you do. But that was absolutely beautiful. And there were quite a few upset swamp puppies after that one. I could hear them growling all around me. But I'm not going to lie, because I can't see the stream from where I'm at. So I'm going off of what I can see as it flies, and also what you guys are saying on commentary. And based on my first visual was I saw a flash, like way out in the distance in the direction that the first stage was traveling, and then it was a bright white and quick flash. Although it was a bit lower than I figured the entry burn would start, but I got a little concerned, and so I went into the back channel and asked if we still had telemetry. We did, of course. And then when you called out that we had issues with the stream, I was like, "Oh dear, have they lost it?" So, but I'm very glad to hear that it was another textbook mission for Falcon 9.
Yeah. You saw there briefly, we had Julia, an awesome, there we go. There it is. An amazing shot from Julia there. Gorgeous. All right. So, yeah. Another Starlink launch. Though this one did feel a bit different since we've been on here for so long. But yeah.
It felt different because these late night Starlinks always hit differently, Hagen. That's how it always goes.
Yep. They do be hitting different. Though at least this one was not at 4 a.m. Let's be happy about that.
That's also very true. And I just saw some wicked lightning right behind 42.
Yep,
Hopefully our cameras picked that up.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was awesome.
So that was a flash that I saw earlier.
Yeah.
Nice to know.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me hit these super chats real quick. We have a store message here from Gary saying, launch, entry, and landing. We just watched it happen. Yep. We have another. We have some gifted memberships here from Andy. Andy, thank you so much for your support tonight, gifting 10 Red Team memberships. So if you got one of those, we hope you enjoy our membership perks. And then we have a new member here. It's only Kale, becoming a Pad Rat member. So yeah, thank you guys so much for your support. Gorgeous shot of the VAB there. And just witnessed yet another launch. All right, well, I think with the rocket on its way, some new Starlinks on their way to orbit, I think that's going to do it for us here. My name is Hagen Warren. I'm an editor here at NSF. I've been your host tonight. And then joining us here tonight, we had Chris Bergen, NSF Actual. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
It's all right. I want to go to bed now.
Oh, me too. We had Max out there in the field getting us those awesome shots of tonight's launch. Thank you so much for rolling out there tonight, Max, and getting us some awesome camera views.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. And how about let's do it again in about 3 or 4 days' time?
Yeah. Yep. And then also joining me here today, helping co-host tonight, was Trevor Sesnick, another one of our editors here at NSF. Thank you for joining us and answering some questions tonight, Trevor.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad we saw a successful launch of Falcon 9 for its 17th time.
Indeed. And then, of course, in the back channel, we had Mr. Patrick in the background pulling levers and ensuring that everything was in working order. So massive thank you to him for ensuring that everything has been going smoothly tonight. So yeah, well, that's going to do it for us here at NSF. We hope you all have a wonderful evening, morning, or day, wherever you are. And we will see you all again for the next launch. See ya.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange! 125! Oh my god! Oh my god! Decollage. Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?